Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another edition of Encounters. Today I want to bring you a conversation with a very, very interesting man who's had an extraordinary life, but it will be an ordinary conversation. He's going to explain his activism that spanned three decades. Starting in 1969, he was the founding member of the Indians Against Fascism. He then went on to become a founding member of the Anti-Nazi League and is currently a member of the Unite Against Fascism. His name is Balvinder Singh Rana, and I welcome him to the show. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Paji.
Waheguru Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Fateh. Thank you.
I've endeavoured to introduce you to the public, to the Sangat sitting at home. If anything, I've missed out. Have I missed anything out?
Not at all. I'm very grateful for you inviting me to this show today, and I really want to thank you. It was the Indian Youth Federation, which we founded in 1969.
Indian Youth Federation, sorry, I apologize.
And also I founded the Sikhs Against the English Defence League. And that is, rest is all correct, yes.
Yeah, the Sikhs Against the EDL, which was in response to, not the EDL per se, but to the Sikh membership that began to grow towards the EDL and support of the EDL from members of the Sikh community.
That is quite correct, because the EDL came on the scene about 4 years ago. And at that time, I started going on the counter demonstration against the EDL as part of the Unite Against Fascism.
Yeah.
And the EDL were marching in many different towns all around the country. Then we started to hear this young man, a Sikh young man, I think we can give his name in the public domain, Gurmeet Singh from Begum. And he started making very inflammatory speeches, and also they start carrying the Sikh flag on the marches. They also start using the Sikh emblems in their propaganda. It was in Bolton when I saw them carrying the Khanda Sahib, and which really made my blood boil. And I decided something has to be done, because we should try to dissuade our Sikh youth, young Sikh, who are being misguided, misled by these neo-Nazis and fascists, which that's really what they were. Although they're pretending they are not. But we knew quite clearly, people like myself, others who had been active in the anti-racist, anti-fascist struggle for many decades, we immediately recognized them that their real agenda is very different what they claim publicly, especially because the founding member of the EDL, who called himself Tommy Robinson, his real name was very different, Jackson Lennon, Stephen Jackson Lennon. He had been a member of the British National Party. So were many others amongst them who were ex-members of BNP. So I thought we should try to educate our young people, Sikh youth, so that we can ask them not to support these neo-Nazis and fascists. For that reason, I wrote a joint statement, which I can show you later on the camera. First, I can show you now here.
Yeah, I remember the statement well.
Yes, and I wrote the statement. I took to the Sri Guru Singh Sabha Gurdwara here in Southall to the committee.
Yeah.
And I'm very honored and I'm very proud to say that they immediately signed the statement, because they recognized the danger we were facing if our more and more Sikh youth started supporting this new organization. Then I went to all the other Gurdwaras and Hindu temples in Southall, and they all, again I'm very proud to say, they all signed the statement. Then I went to a number of universities, and half a dozen Sikh student societies in the universities also signed, and also quite a few students joined with me.
Was this in London-based universities and temples, or did you try and branch out?
Actually, they were all around, and they were from the, I got a list of them, yeah, mostly the Hertfordshire as well, but mostly London-based.
Did you go to Luton?
I didn't go to Luton at that time, although we went on a demonstration against the EDL in Luton.
You went to the heartland?
That's right, yes. And then when I got all these young people with me, we all went to Birmingham, came to your town, Birmingham, and also 6 Gurdwaras, I'm very again proud to say, they signed the statement, including the Ramgiriya Sabha and the Sri Guru Nanak Nishkam said Vijatha,
Yeah.
Bhai Sahib Ji, they signed a statement as well. And then we launched ourselves in the press, and we were given quite a bit of coverage. And we also started joining the other demonstration against the EDL, like in Luton and Coventry and Bristol and East London. We went all over the place. We proudly showed our banner.
Tower Hamlets.
Yes, we Six Against the EDL banner we carried with us, and we also printed a number of leaflets like this one.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
the
this one. And we went to the Nagar Kirtans in Southall, in Birmingham Mela, in Barking Mela, and we issued many thousands of these leaflets to the congregations. And I was also allowed to speak in a number of gurdwaras in Barking, in Southall, and Birmingham. And so we started to educate the Sikh community, the congregation. So the Sikh gentlemen who were beginning to support the neo-Nazi fascists, they realized that they were not getting much voice. In fact, a vast number of Sikhs were against them. And because I was interviewing myself on the BBC Midlands and various other channels, even in Canada, radio station, in New Zealand radio station, they phoned me. So we started to build up a campaign, and as a result of that, our campaign, Gurmeet Singh, we asked him to actually leave the EDL, which he responded within a week after we requested him to do so. And I'm very glad that he accepted our reasons to resign, and he left the EDL. But unfortunately, a couple others are still hanging around. They turn up now and then on EDL demonstrations. And again, we have issued appeal to them as well that they should probably, by now, it's very clear what we were saying all the time. In fact, the leader of the EDL, Tommy Robinson himself, left the EDL saying exactly what we had been saying for the last 4 years, that it's a neo-Nazi, a fascist organization.
Yeah.
And those are reasons exactly what he, the leader, the founding member of the EDL, said himself. He said, I'm leaving the EDL, it's full of neo-Nazis and fascists. But I'm surprised a couple of our Sikh youths are still turning up with them.
What he actually said was that, that the members of the EDL themselves were good people.
Yes.
That the fascists were targeting and trying to overtake the core leadership or the steering group, if you like.
Exactly. He had lost the control of the EDL.
He had indeed.
And we can only assume the only way he could have lost the control if the majority of them he found to be neo-Nazi fascists. Otherwise, if there were only one or two of them, if you spent 4 years of life building an organization, you will not leave it suddenly unless you realize the majority are against you.
Yeah.
So we can assume majority of them are exactly what he said, neo-Nazi fascists. And again, that is a maybe.
Balvinder, yourself,
yes.
You've been in this environment and this game, for want of a better phrase. You've been in this game a long time.
45 years now.
There you go. If anybody is sitting there wondering whether you've been on the fringes or whether you've been in the thick of it, you were personal friends with Blair Peach, were you not?
I was, yes, I was.
Blair Peach, activist who died at the sharp end of a truncheon.
Exactly.
Of a Metropolitan Police officer from London.
That's right.
Just for the enlightenment of our Sangat and the audience at home, could you just explain to people who Blair Peach was, what your relationship with Blair Peach was?
Blair Peach was a school teacher. He was from New Zealand. He came to this country and he was living in East London, and he was working in a special needs school for the young children who had special needs, delicate children. And he was a socialist and also anti-racist. I met him in 1977 in East London because at that time the National Front used to come to Brick Lane to sell their newspapers. and do their racist propaganda. And as a result of that, there were 3 racist murders of Bangladeshis in a matter of 3 months. First, it was Atwal, who was knifed to death by a racist gang. Then a month later, Ishaq Ali, and a month later, Kenneth Singh. They were all credible in that period.
Yeah, on Commercial Road.
In the Brick Lane area, Commercial Street area, that's right, yes. And the National Front used to sell their papers every Sunday in the market, Brick Lane market. So I was at that time member of the Anti-Nazi League, and we decided to stop them, oppose them selling their racist papers there, giving their propaganda. As we start turning up every Sunday there as well, the police said, anyone who comes here on this spot the first, they will be given that spot. Others will be moved away, moved off. So we started turning up 6 o'clock in the morning on Sundays. And the National Front, they start turning up as well. Then we started turning up Saturday night to spend all Saturday night on the pavement, in the rain and wet, pavement, so that we could have the pitch Sunday mornings. They start doing the same as well. They start turning up Saturday night as well. We started turning up Friday night, or Friday, spending basically 2 nights on the pavement, and so that we could be first on Sunday mornings, and we will have the pitch. National Front will be moved away from by the police.
Yeah.
In those days, Blair used to be almost every time he used to be there, every Saturday, Friday nights. He used to spend, with me on the pavement, sometimes be pouring down, And he was a really good man, anti-fascist, a very friendly person, very nice person. And when in the Southall, the National Front were allowed to hold a rally in the Southall Town Hall, that was 23rd April 1979.
Yeah.
In fact, we only heard a couple of weeks before that they were being allowed by the Tory Council to hold their rally right in the heart of Southall, which by that time was a largely Asian community.
Yeah, mini Punjab.
Exactly. And we felt it was an insult to our whole community.
At that point, had you moved from Gravesend and you were now living in Southall?
Yes, I moved a few months earlier, about a year earlier to South. When before that, I spent 2 years working full-time for the Anti-Nazi League. I was the National Asian Organizer. At that time, I used to go all around the country, wherever the National Front were going to hold their march. I used to go there a couple of weeks before that and try to build a support amongst our Asian community against the National Front. I went all around like Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, and Southend, almost everywhere, wherever the National Front held their march. I used to be there beforehand, trying to build a support amongst our communities. So for that reason, I moved to Southall because we had a bigger base in Southall. And from here, I could go all around, And it was a couple of weeks before the National Front were coming to Southall that we heard. Immediately, the Indian Workers Association, they called a meeting, a delegate meeting. They invited 2 people from each organization to come to their meeting. 80 people came, representing a multitude of different organizations like religious organizations, trade unions, political parties, as well as women's organizations, youth organizations. They all were represented at the meeting. And they elected an organizing committee to organizing protests because they took a decision that one was that the 23rd was a Monday. They decided that we'll raise a petition asking people to sign a petition opposing the National Front rally, which we were going to present to the Ealing Council one day before the 23rd of April, that was Sunday. And also they took a decision that on the Monday, if the rally is not banned, then they will ask the whole community shopkeepers, all the local shops to shut down at 1 o'clock. Also ask all the local workers in all the factories to go on strike at the same time. These decisions were taken by the whole the meeting. They also elected a 5-member committee to organize, and I was one of those 5 members.
Yeah.
Then the committee further appointed me as a chief steward for the demonstrations. And on that Sunday, some 5,000 people from us, we marched from Southall all the way to Ealing to present our petition. And to my surprise, I was chief steward, we had a lot of stewards, and we thought we will be able to control the march ourselves. We don't need any police. But when we were assembling in the Dominion Centre car park, there were hundreds of police. There were so many police on horsebacks, there were so many police dogs, and hundreds of police lining all around. So I went up to the chief of police. I said, why you brought so many of your people? What is the need? He said, we are here to protect you from National Front. I said, what? we have 5,000-6,000 people here. You know, we don't need your protection. We can protect ourselves. He said, no. You know. Anyway, as we marched from Southall to Ealing, the police started to harass our young people, and they arrested 20 people on the way. In fact, as we were approaching the Southall police station, the police arrested a couple of young people, and for minor little things like they were playing. One of the young lads, I saw him myself. He was playing with a policeman. He just chopped his hat off as a joke.
Yeah.
They immediately grabbed his arm.
Well, it's not a joke, is it? It's provocation.
Exactly, of course. But yeah, I can understand. Yeah, but a bit too rough with them, and other people object to that. So I stopped the march in front of the police station. I went inside to talk to chief of police. I said, please let us march. You know, if you start doing this, arresting people, maybe we can talk about it afterwards. You know, and he can apologize to the policeman. And maybe he said, no, you know, he threatened to arrest me as well. I said, okay, you can arrest me, but what happens afterwards, I cannot be responsible, you know. Yeah. Then he said, okay, so we let him march. But trouble is, that sort of set the whole scene from that day. The police trying to kind of harass the young people, and they arrested 20 people on the way. The next day, the National Front rally was going to be held at 7:30 in the town hall. The committee or meeting had decided that we will have a peaceful sit-down protest outside the town hall.
Yeah.
We will sit down all around, and we will be prepared to give ourselves be arrested. Just like in India, people we are used to in India that tarna marna up in arrest ho jana.
Yep.
That was our plan. We had no intention of having any violent demonstration. We will have a very peaceful sit-down protest. We will offer ourselves to be arrested by the police. Maybe hundreds, you know, we could say, you know, arrest as many of us as you like. But it is a right to sit down, have peaceful protest. But the police, we expect them to come 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock to Southall, then, you know, organize. But to my surprise, police start turning up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and thousands of them. There were more than three. It is government figures that 3,500 police were in Southall on that day, and they start to block the roads. Now Southall town hall is right in the center. The 4 roads lead off in 4 directions from the town hall, and they block the roads about half a mile, quarter mile in each direction. And the people were not allowed to go to even to their own homes.
So this was almost kettling, weren't it?
It was kettling exactly
policy.
In those days, they used these tactics in Ireland. They used to occupy the whole, like Belfast or cities, you know.
In occupied Ireland, Northern Ireland.
Exactly, Northern Ireland, yeah. So they used exactly the same tactic in Northern Ireland, that they occupied our town, basically, you know. And we were like strangers in our own town. And so this basically set the scene for the rest of the day. And rather than letting us have our peaceful protest, they were intent on denying us our, democratic right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happened? People started, the shops shut at 1 o'clock, and people started coming went on strike, and all the local factories and airport as well. They started coming to their town, and they were prevented to even going to their own homes. And some young people got together. They want to go to the town center, and the scuffles broke out with the police. Also, at that time, there were these young people. They saw some Skinners on top of the bus, and they tried to get on the bus. There was a fight broke up with the police.
Yeah.
At that time, I approached the police myself, saying, "Look, I'm the chief steward. Please let me handle the situation." They basically told me to go away. They were not prepared to listen to our stewards. All our stewards we were basically very, very disappointed and very disheartened that we were not being allowed to manage the situation, and the police themselves wanted to basically make everything worse. And then later on, when the people started coming to make the protest around 4:30, 5 o'clock, there were 1,000 people gathered on all the 4 road blocks. And also our friends from outside, the other anti-racists, white anti-racists, they came from all around London. They, like Blair Peach, they joined us as well.
Yeah.
And as the time of the rally was approaching, around 7 o'clock, a lot of people were frustrated. They were saying that, we want to go near to the town hall. We want to have a sit-down protest as it's a right. And the police were refusing, not letting them go. So some scuffles started breaking out on all sides. Again, the police tactics were basically, they thought somehow they can scare people off. They can just beat them up and people will go to their homes. Now, our young people who were born and brought up in this country or came to this country in a younger age, they were not prepared to be treated like that by the police. So they started to fight back. The police, then the police started to use, first they unleashed dogs, trying to make the people run back. But people were not prepared to, people run back, then they come back again. Then the police decided to have the special patrol group van. They will drive at quite high speed into the crowd. People run back.
Yeah.
And these snatch squads will jump out of the back of the police vans. They will snatch our youngsters and arrest them and even beat them up. There's so many pictures available can be shown how they beat up our youngsters.
Yeah.
And also on horseback, the police on horseback, they will charge into the crowds at a high speed and dispersing people, hitting people over the heads with their long sticks.
These are all methods tried and trusted in Belfast.
Exactly. They would use the same methods again, and they were practicing them to use somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And in fact, they were trying to terrify our community into submission, and they thought that somehow, if they can succeed using such methods, scare our people in Southall, which is our basic capital at that time, our largest community in this country at that time. They thought if they can succeed doing that in Southall, then all around the country, our people will not fight for the rights. They will probably just sit back and, accept the racists coming to their towns. I think that was their plan.
Absolutely, yeah. That if Southall couldn't resist this sort of situation, then no one's going to be able to resist it, really.
Yes.
So, Blair Peach?
Okay. It was in one of those police charges when they were charging that Blair Peach and his friends, in fact, they were at that time leaving, they were trying to go home. A police van chased them, and then 6 policemen got off the van, and they started hitting these people. They hit Blair Peach in front of 6 witnesses. This is all now accepted by the police as well.
Yep.
In front of 6 witnesses, they hit one of the policemen whose numbers were covered, hit him over the head.
Illegally? Is that illegal?
No, it's not.
A policeman to cover his numbers is not illegal?
It is illegal, but they were doing that on that day.
Yeah, illegally.
Illegally, exactly, yes. And he was hit on the head, clubbed on, and he fell. And then they, in fact, tried to kick him, asked him to get up. And he could not get up. Then because they were trying to hit him again, he struggled to his feet. Then he crossed the road and he fell into some garden. This is Mr. Atwal, a very nice chap of Atwal. And he came out and he helped, his family came out to help Blair Peach. They took him inside. And by that time, his skull had been fractured. It had sunk into his head, into his brain. They called the ambulance. The ambulance took him to the hospital, where he died a few hours later. But even when he was there sitting there dying, they were kicking him, and because with the last breath, he managed to get up and walk across the road. That was sort of brutality the police had used on that day. They arrested more than 700 people. They took them all around because the police had come from like Reading and Slough and various other places.
It was drafted in.
And they took our youngsters and they dropped them on the motorways. Some of them had to walk in the rain on that day, from like Reading and Slough.
Yeah.
Had to walk all the way back. And we were we had set up our center from where we were controlling. We had our doctors there, nurses, lawyers, and we had ambulance as well. We had set up all. In fact, they smashed. The police charged into our center. They smashed everything. They beat up people inside. The doctors were beaten up, nurses were beaten up, lawyers, they were all attacked. The people who were upstairs.
This is the Margaret Thatcher government.
Exactly. No, sorry, it was the Labour government.
In 1979?
79. Maggie Thatcher came to power a few weeks afterwards.
Okay.
This all happened under the Labour government.
Callaghan.
And Marlon Rees was the Home Secretary at the time. And James Callaghan was the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And the police went up, they lined these stairs, and they told people to come downstairs. As people were coming down, they ran a gauntlet. They were hitting them over the heads. And in that course, one of the black musicians, Clarence Baker,
yeah,
he was hit on the head. His skull was also fractured. Lucky he survived. He did not die.
Yeah.
So they arrested 700 people, and out of them 352 were charged, and many of them paid fines. A number of them also went to prison. And all that sacrifice our people made, especially youngsters made on that day. But on that, even all youngsters, in fact, again, a lot of pictures you can see, there were old people, men, women, children, the whole community had come together on that day to, fight for the democratic rights, to fight against the racism. Because all we wanted was that we should not be insulted by the racist fashion in our own town. They were doing it all around all the country, but coming to our own home, coming right in the middle, and also only a handful of them, because they brought only 30 of them. They brought in a coach.
Let me ask you a question, Balvinder.
Sure, yeah.
You've spent 3 decades fighting fascists.
Yes.
Literally and figuratively.
Exactly, yes.
You've seen close friends like Blair Peach.
Exactly.
Who have sadly passed away.
Mm-hmm.
In for want of a better phrase, in the line of duty.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, nobody has ever been charged with his murder, which is what it was. It was murder,
yes.
Corporate or otherwise.
Exactly.
He was almost an Ian Tomlinson, if we think about it that way.
Exactly.
With the May Day riots, the kettling, exactly the same thing.
That's right.
Arbitrary violence perpetrated by the bastions and guardians of law and order.
Yes.
But murder nonetheless.
Yes.
So you've seen all this.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward now to 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Once upon a time, like you've just said, all these communities, they come together
Mm-hmm.
to fight a common enemy or a common threat to
Yes.
the unity of the fabric of society, whether it be multicultural or multi-faith,
Mm-hmm.
or all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
Just recently now,
Mm-hmm.
we've seen, we've seen people like Gareth Williamson,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm sure you know of him,
Yes.
and Patrick
Harrington.
Harrington.
Yes.
Well, there you go. You know the two of them.
Yes. Yes.
So Patrick Harrington, Gareth Williamson, joining forces with Tamils, Kurdish
Yes.
people,
Yes.
and more noticeably for ourselves,
Yes.
two very prominent members of the Sikh community.
Hmm.
What does anything in those names strike you as worthy of mention in regards to and in context of the conversation we've just had?
Yes. This story broke recently, and I'm very, very disheartened, and I'm very surprised that some of our Sikh youth, Sikh men, again seem to have fallen into this trap. Because Patrick Harrington, I'm very familiar with this person. He stood in the elections in Ealing area a number of years ago, so I have some dealings with him before. From what I can remember, this person is not someone any Sikh or in fact any person should be having any dealing with him at all. Okay, he was openly racist and fascist in those days. I cannot imagine he has changed his views now. And I would request these Sikh gentlemen that they should not be dealing with any person like that, because these people, they want to use us. Before the British National Party, they tried to use Sikhs by recruiting some Sikh man, and then the English Defence League. Now this new organization, they are playing the same game. But these people, they want to use us today, and they will probably spit us out tomorrow. So again,
What it is, you've got Gareth Williamson, in essence.
yes,
I've heard Upkar Singh,
yes,
one of the fellows who was is adamant that he's going to stay on the National Liberal Party ticket. He said that Williamson was a BNP member 4 years ago
yes,
and has since left the BNP,
hmm,
and that since then he's been working with various different ethnicities for their causes, and that he should be looked at differently now than the man he was 4 years ago. But makes no mention of the fact that he's still a board member of the Trade Union Solidarity,
yes,
and the fact that he's also one of the trustees of the Third Way think tank, which is a far-right think tank. Let's make no bones about it. It's a clear think tank that clearly represents the far right. Is Williamson any different to Harrington?
I do not believe it. I mean, even if he's left the BNP, but this the whole idea, that third way, is basically in fact, this Italian gentleman who came, this Fiore, his name, came with this idea that perhaps for the nationalists, they called them some nationalists. Hitler was in fact a nationalist. A lot of these Mussolini, they neo-Nazi nationalists. And there's we can have a debate which there can be some good nationalism, some bad nationalism, but the neo-Nazi fascists like Hitler, these people, they believe that somehow they can attract other people who are also fighting for national liberation, Sikhs or the Tamils, etc. But for them, Sikhs and Tamils will be something like the Bantustans in South Africa, when they said that you have your own nationality, you have your own area to live in. We, the whites, we are also nationals, we live in our own area. Bantustans were used by them as slave camps. I think when they think of the Sikhs and Tamils, they do not think them as equal. They do not want them similar rights, etc. They think themselves some sort of Bantustan. Okay, we'll help. We can say you are fighting your own nationalist state or your ideas. We are doing as well. But for them, they are not the same. They are totally different. So for that reason, I would say, if any Sikhs or anyone want to fight for their self-determination, they should use a channel like the United Nations and other organizations, and work through or other political parties, but never, never, ever think of joining these neo-Nazis, fascists, because for them, we are just meat. They can just use us and abuse us.
And then they'll move on to their next victims and next issues.
I'm sorry?
And then they'll just move on to their next issues?
Exactly,
The next
exactly.
victims?
Once they have used us, then they're going to, yes. I think this problem, because in the old days, like I started in 1969 in the struggle against race and fascism. At that time, Enoch Powell made his Rivers of Blood
Rivers of
speech
Blood
in
speech.
68 in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Immediately after that, a wave of racist attacks had spread all around the country. But the mass media at the time, to my opinion, very disgustingly called it petty bashing,
Yeah.
petty by the skinheads.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And at that time, we were all peckies. To racist fascists, we were all the same. And these racist attacks were taking place all over the country. In fact, I can still remember some of the headlines in some of the right-wing media. They were just saying that in such and such town, so many peckies were attacked or bashed by the skinheads.
Yeah.
For them, it was a sort of joke.
Yeah, it was like a football result.
Exactly, yes. And, it was really shameful. That's time when in Gravesend, some of the youth, we got together. We said we must do something. We have to organize the youth. And as a result, we set up the Indian Youth Federation of Gravesend, and they elected me their president. So that was the very first Asian youth organization in the whole country. And we set about to defend our community against the racist attacks.
Yeah.
And then in 1974, the National Front held their very first rally in London. It was in Red Lion Square in Conway Hall. Outside that, there was a massive protest by the anti-racists, mainly white anti-racists. I myself was not there on the day, but a week later, there was a big protest because on that day, a young student called Kevin Gately also got killed.
Yeah.
He got trampled under a police horse because police attacked the anti-racists.
Yeah.
A week later, there was a massive protest against his killing in London, and some of us came from Gravesend to take part in that demonstration. Then National Front had their very first march in Leicester in 1974, when we brought a coach load from Gravesend to take part in anti-National Front demonstration. And afterwards, in 1976, the National Front started coming to Gravesend on a weekly basis. And that's when we again organized the whole community in Gravesend. And we, for 6-7 weeks, we protested against them, we fought against them, and we eventually managed to get rid of them. And for the next 20 years, they never set a foot in the town. Because our youth in Gravesend at that time, we organized so well that we defeated them. They never came back. In fact, that was shown, I don't know if I can mention the Channel 4.
Yeah, of course, why not?
They made 10 years ago, they made a documentary called Sixth Street.
Yep.
And the Sikh community of Gravesend is the whole history, in which they gave us quite from our organization, they gave us all the details. And if people can ever, it was on the YouTube recently, this morning I saw it was deleted. I'll put up there again. Maybe some people can see it on 6th Street. And in those days, the point I was trying to make that we were all the same. Whether we were Sikhs, whether we were Hindus, whether we were Muslims or blacks, we were all treated the same with our racist fascists. They used to attack us all at the same time. In the more recent years, the racists did become very clever. They think rather than attacking us all at the same time, they use Islamic tactics. They try to take us one by one.
Yeah.
And that is how the EDL came, their policies were only they were saying we are only against the Muslims. And that's why some Sikh youth were fooled by them. And now these gentlemen from this new party, the National Liberal Party, they're using the same tactics again. They're saying that, Sikhs, you are okay, we like you, but we don't like these Muslims or Hindus, etc. But it's all the same divide and rule tactics. They want to divide and rule, but we should never be fooled. For the racists, we are all the same.
What do you say to them if they say, the story broke on Saturday morning, on a Saturday morning.
Yes.
The Friday before that story broke, they kind of got wind that something was afoot.
Yes.
At that point, Mr. Williamson stepped down from the leadership. He would be the lead candidate. So in effect, the 8 candidates who were up for election, only one of them would have had a seat, and that would have been Williamson. So in effect, the ethnic minorities of West London would have elected a neo-Nazi fascist sympathiser to represent them in Brussels. But on the Friday morning before the story broke, that they got wind of that there was a story there, something in the wind maybe, and he stepped down from being the lead candidate, and now Jagdish is the lead candidate. Yeah, he's an activist, Sikh activist, who I know very well. I wouldn't question his sincerity towards the Sikh cause, self-determination, justice for 1984, justice for the genocide in general over the decade 84 to 94. I wouldn't question his sincerity whatsoever. What I do question is his naivety. And in that sense, now that he's the lead candidate, would that not make it a safer bet if we did vote for it? Would you not think that the NLP, that the threat, the neo-fascist or neo-Nazi threat, has subsided with the stepping down of Williamson?
Not at all. To me, it only shows opportunism. This chap was complete opportunist. He was trying to hide his real identity, but his politics. Williamson.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Williamson. Yes, he was trying to hide his true identity.
Yeah.
Once this was exposed, he decided to step down. But I do not believe their basic tenets, their basic policies have changed. So these 2 Sikh gentlemen, I do not know their background, so I will not say a word against them.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're very sincere people, and they believe in very laudable causes. Of course, people, what happened in Delhi in 1984, I mean, even, Blue Star, all those are published articles before I'm known to, to oppose all those things. But these gentlemen, again, I would say to them, please think, if this man one day was a fascist, today he says he stepped down, he's not a fascist, there's really something is wrong there. Please think again. Maybe you are totally in the wrong organization. Perhaps you should think and carry on with your struggle, carry on, but please do it in a different way. Go through legal channels, different parties, and not try to be pawn in the game of these neo-Nazi fascists who will only use you and abuse you.
Well, to me, it appears to be that if he had been a reformed character and his opinions of 4 years ago are no longer his opinions today, then surely now was the opportunity to prove that, rather than step down. If you know you've held opinions that are contrary to what your apparent and stated beliefs are today, then you know that somebody sooner or later is going to ask you about that, considering you're the lead candidate for a brand new party. So surely you would have had a statement prepared. Unless, of course, there's the suggestion that you never intended to address these because they are not maybe old ideologies that you no longer espouse, but that I would rather kept secret and I don't need to address them. And if I must have, if I come to a point where I have to address them, I'll step down rather than address them. And then you have somebody like Upkar Singh who addresses it for him and says that was 4 years ago. Since then he's worked with ethnic minorities and different communities in their determination for self-determination, in their struggles and what have you.
Exactly, I could not put it better. You're perfectly right. Because if this man was totally changed and reformed character, he would have stood and said, look, this is my proof. This is what I've done. And I'm totally sorry what I did in the past. Sincere apology. And give a proof of his new changed behavior. But rather than doing that, he has stepped down. That to me proves that he was trying to hide as long as they could, once it became clear he can no longer hide, then he steps down.
It became untenable.
Exactly.
Yeah. Baji, did you write an article recently, maybe a week ago, on Blair Peach itself, in the fact that nobody's ever been charged in the Gazette, Southall Gazette, was it?
Last week I wrote an article in the Southall Gazette, which was published
Yeah.
the Western all the gazettes. I don't know if you can read it from
I
there.
can see, yeah, 35 years
Yes,
later,
yes.
no one's still been charged.
Yes, and I think it is very important that Blair Peach gets the justice. Even after 35 years, he still have not had the justice. His family have not had the justice. Our Southall community has not had the justice done. Now, police own internal inquiry said that it was one of the 6 policemen who has killed Blair Peach. It's not. It's in the public domain now.
That is in the public domain, yes.
Exactly. So we cannot hide. I would say that we need a second inquest into Blair Peach's death, just like in the recently number of cases, Hillsborough disaster, the disaster. There's been a second inquest,
Yeah.
and so I think we need the government to order a second inquest into the death of Blair Peach, so the people who are responsible for his death, they face the consequences.
Okay. Do you think that's possible? Would they go back to it and say, considering it's one of their own, like Ian Tomlinson, his family, they got a lawful killing verdict, even though the policeman attacked an unarmed civilian with his back turned to him. With all the outcry and all the hue and cry around that situation, there's no very real perspective that they're going to get that second inquest and have it reheard. With Blair Peach now being it 35 years later, it seems as if they're trying to bury it. They've succeeded in burying it, have they not?
I think so, yes. I think it's going to be very difficult. At the same time, I think although his family, the police apologized to his family, they even gave a compensation.
Yeah.
But I think it needs something more than that. I think it needs the real acceptance. Yes, we agree it was a policeman who killed Blair Peach. And not even, they have not said that at all. Although the police report said it and police report was released, but no one has actually come out and said that. I think what we need, maybe the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, openly accept in the House of Commons, saying that yes, this is the police report findings and we completely accept it, and we agree that one of the policemen who was responsible for the killing of Blair Peach, and we apologize for that. I think that may be enough if they are not prepared to go into any proper inquest.
Does Unite Against Fascism have any sort of memorial or anything like that regarding Blair Peach? Is there anything that happens to commemorate Blair Peach's life or his death even?
There are schools in Southall, in fact 2 schools, the junior and the infant school, they are named after Blair Peach.
Yeah.
That again, I congratulate the Southall community and the Ealing Council at the time who named a school after him because he was a school teacher. There's used to be a plaque at the corner where he was killed a number of years ago, but unfortunately that disappeared. And again, a number of people have now started a campaign that we need a proper memorial, a proper plaque at the spot where he was killed. And I myself fully support their initiatives, the people who are involved in this campaign. I think we definitely need something at that spot itself. Like they have a policeman who've been killed in like Yvonne Fletcher, where she was killed. There's a plaque there on the pavement. I think something.
Yvonne Fletcher.
Yvonne, that's right.
Yeah.
Also the Libyan embassy where she was killed.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I think similarly, I think we in Southall we need.
Is there one for PC Blakelock?
There is as well.
There is one. There is a commemorative plaque for PC Blake as well.
Yes. They were both tragic situations. Similarly, Blair Peachy was very tragic case, and we need Blair Peachy treated just like that. So we need a proper memorial at the spot where he was killed. So our new generation, young people who in our new community will never forget who Blair Peach was, and he gave his life for our community.
Well, yeah, thank you for coming. Sure, sadly, we're out of time today. This is all we've got time for with today's encounters. But I appreciate you making time to come and speak to us.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really glad that you gave me this opportunity to speak to the Sangat, and I shall always be grateful for that. Thank you very much. Waheguru Khalsa, Sri Ji Ki Fateh.
And that is sadly all we've got time for today on Encounters. You may have found that informative, you may have found it inspiring. I thought it was absolutely necessary for the generations that are coming now to fully understand exactly why you've got the rights, why you've got the pride, why you've got the right to walk around the way you do. This multicultural environment and society that we live in did not create itself. The people that are rallying against multiculturalism in the UK were rallying against it a lot harder before it even came into existence. So from the first Sikhs and Punjabis and ethnic minorities in general that landed in the UK during the 50s and 60s to today, there's been an ongoing struggle, and that ongoing struggle was typified and spearheaded by people like Balvinder Singh Rana. And for us to appreciate where we are now, we have to remember how hard it was then. So when we go to the Gurdwara and we do Ardas and we say Shaheedanu Pranam and Charkiyan Te Chade and things of that nature, to understand just what it takes to be a Sikh in this world, for you to be a Singh, for you to call yourself a Singh, that certain things were sacrificed in the past for you to have the right now. Well then, for any ethnic minority to have the right to walk down the street, say he's British and say it with pride, took a lot of sacrifices, including Blair Peach's. So before you jump into bed with a fascist or a Nazi sympathizer, think very, very hard about who you are and what gave you the right to be who you are. That's all we've got time for today on Encounters. We'll see you again. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.